2020 is already the deadliest year on record for transgender Americans. Let's think about that for a second. Despite the lockdowns, more have been killed this year than any other. The vast majority of the victims are women of color. So what is going on, and how does this fit into the broader social justice movement of this tumultuous year? Arcivos and Sami reports.
One of the ugliest parts of this cell phone video recorded on Hollywood Boulevard in August is the laughter.
I got a headache. I was laughing too much right now.
People were laughing as 3 trans women of color were being harassed and then beaten by the men you see here. The video is at the heart of a Los Angeles police investigation that is still ongoing.
What was particularly callous about these crimes was the actions of the onlookers, who recorded and appeared to celebrate the assaults rather than render aid and assist the victims.
Police say the trouble started with this man, seen in this surveillance video, confronting the 3 trans women outside a store on the Strip. Investigators say that just moments earlier, he was offering to buy them something, but once inside the store, he refused to pay, ran out, and then came back with a tire iron.
I knew stuff like this happens to girls all the time like me, but I just never thought it could be me. And I know that sounds like really, it just sounds ignorant, because it's like, why wouldn't it happen to me? Like, I'm no different than any other girl that is trans. Like, I'm a target just like everybody else is.
The next half hour was violent and was seen around the world in this cell phone video shared publicly on social media. Jasleen Boussinet was catching her breath when police say someone ran up behind her and smashed a long piece of metal into her head.
Damn! Damn! What the yeah, I think it's time to leave. I didn't get that. Hey! She dead. Get her again.
It was brutal, awful, and heartbreaking as they cried in the street. But what they say hurt even more is that all the men who were beating them down or seen laughing away were black and brown.
Yeah, but I'm finna get shot. Let's get the out of here. Black Lives Matter.
You want to talk about Black Lives Matter? But a black girl sitting on the floor.
Where's the blood?
We knew that they weren't trying to help us, because they were literally antagonizing the situation. So that was scary in one. But then even when I was running around the street asking someone to like just call 911, please call 911. People were telling me no. People were like literally walking away from me. I don't know if they were there the whole time, but I see them like with their phones chanting like Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. And my friend had gotten up off of me and was like, there's a black woman on the floor and you guys can't even call the police? Like, you can't help her?
This has been the deadliest year ever for transgender Americans. ABC News confirms that at least 33 have been murdered since January. Almost all of them were black and Hispanic, and many of the accused or suspected killers are black and brown too. Some of the names few people are saying: Dominique Fells, Maya Green, and Tony McDade, who was killed during an incident with police in Florida just 2 days after the killing of George Floyd. And then there are the survivors, like Ayanna Dior, who is seen here in cell phone video that investigators are looking through, being beaten by dozens of black fists under this pile of black men at a convenience store in Minneapolis. And all of this was over a small car accident. She spoke about it on Facebook Live.
My bottom teeth, it had went inside my lips, and then my lips are cut on the inside.
There's a strong feeling among black and brown trans activists that over at Black Lives Matter, they don't really care about all black lives. Black trans women in particular are usually under 35 years old when they're killed.
When one of us is killed, it impacts our community much more differently. And then when 2 of us, that's double. And then when there's 20 and 25 and 30 of us, how much 30 lives lost in 1 year really impacts the larger community.
We reached out to representatives of Black Lives Matter to get their response, and no one got back.
And if we're hitting record numbers of trans deaths while we're in quarantine, what does that say about the ridiculousness of this heightened sense of violence that we're having?
Black and brown trans Americans have been fighting this abuse forever, from the days when Marsha P. Johnson threw that first brick of protest at the Stonewall Bar in New York City, where the gay rights movement began. Jasleen Busanet is just 22 years old, so this struggle is new to her.
I've met so many amazing trans women that are very vocal about their transition, and that gave me some type of courage to do the same for myself. But then something like what happened to me on Hollywood Boulevard kind of set me back a little. But I don't want it to put me back in the closet.
In our reporting, we keep hearing the following, that much of this violence is the result of toxic masculinity. Even on Hollywood Boulevard that night, the men were bonding and fist bumping over talk about beating trans women, and the video seems to reflect that.
Because they're like, well, I have these feelings of me liking this woman, but she's trans, so let me beat her up until I don't like her no more. That's kind of what it is. That's what they want to do. They can't take the feelings that they're having for us, so they want to hurt us instead, which is absolutely insane.
I'm thankful that Milan Sherry, she's the founder of hashtag Black Trans Lives Matter. And I think that's really, really important. It's just a hashtag, but it's the beginning of something that acknowledges, again, intersectional identities.
Milan Sherry of New Orleans says that as a trans woman, she hasn't always felt safe at Black Lives Matter rallies, no matter the time of day.
You have not attended Black Lives Matter protest demonstrations, the street protests, for fear of your safety?
Absolutely. Yeah, just going into those, just knowing that as a trans woman, I'm not exempt from being targeted, right? And I'm not exempt from being in spaces where I know I can necessarily be attacked, especially knowing that I'm the type of person that calls people out.
So she created a new space for activism, Black Trans Lives Matter, and it's now turned into a worldwide movement with marches as far away as Holland and people filling the streets of Chicago, Brooklyn, and Los Angeles here at home.
All Black Lives Matter!
But there's no way that Black lives will ever matter when y'all are not inclusive to Black trans lives. So you can't, it's very hypocritical to say Black Lives Matter, and then it's crickets when Black trans women are experiencing the same violence, and even not even addressing the violence that trans women are facing. And the root of the violence is mostly Black men.
And so we have to prioritize through a lens of equity and justice. We have to prioritize the lives of Black trans people, and particularly Black trans women. And so saying it reinforces that our lives do indeed matter.
Los Angeles police have arrested one of the men suspected in the beating on Hollywood Boulevard and accused him of a hate crime. They're still searching for another suspect. 29-year-old Carlton Calloway is pleading not guilty. One of the other men there that night is now working with prosecutors. A fourth man who put the video live on Instagram wrote in this post that he was, quote, sorry if I offended anyone or offended the LGBT community. I know it all looks bad and it's wrong on all of our parts, and again, I'm sorry for not speaking up at the time of the incident and not doing anything to help. It's important to underline that these three trans women were social media stars before this incident, with an amount of fame that most trans Americans of color don't have, and this encouraged police to investigate. They tell us that they just want to feel safe, and that it's not too much to ask from people of their own color.
For a week straight, I didn't want to leave my house. I was super depressed and just scared that it could happen again. I just want to live my life again. I know that this could happen again, but I'm not going to live my life in fear. I'm just going to stay more, I'm just going to make sure that I'm safe.
For ABC News Live, I'm Steve Osunsana.